It was like before a holiday, and I had our second kid. And he's like, sorry, I'm taking one, you take the other. I'm going to my parents. You figure out what you want to do.
Oh my gosh. Wait, like we're like split up for the day?
I don't know.
Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your relationship without your man's conscious effort so that you feel desired and taken care of and special, even if your relationship feels hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm talking about what to do when your husband is always negative, including 3 ways to change that. My guest, Michelle, and her husband were having a lot of blowups and cold wars, and the temperature at her house was getting colder and colder. When she experimented with using just one cheat phrase, things got warmer real fast. She kept going with the 6 intimacy skills, and today her marriage is happy, playful, safe, and loving. She's going to tell us what she did so you can do it too. But first, here's what to do when your husband is always negative, including 3 ways to change that. Because being around Eeyore all the time is draining and discouraging. How are you supposed to enjoy life when your man is constantly throwing cold water on everything or making gloomy comments? You might wonder when he's going to snap out of it or look for a nutritional supplement for him that might help, or a sleep aid, or a therapist to help him cheer the heck up so you don't have to be around his apathetic self. But none of that works in my experience. Well, here are 3 things that will shift the tone of your home from pessimistic to positive. Number one, get silly. So he's negative. That's obvious. But let me ask you a question. Are you an optimist? I mean, they statistically live longer and make more money. So who wouldn't choose that outlook, right? I think of myself as an optimist. I mean, I aspire to that. But then sometimes I find myself saying things that seem obvious, but that aren't so positive about my husband, kind of like a negative person would. So then I find myself nominated for Hypocrite of the Year award for making a negative comment about his negativity, even though I'm not the negative one, he is. So it turns out that saying that he's negative, even to myself, is a little negative. So, one way to get some of the negativity out of the house is to open the window and put on neighborhood theater, preferably with hand puppets. But making funny faces and dumb jokes will do if you are out of hand puppets. Or you could watch a happy video that makes you laugh out loud and then text it to 3 friends with like 10 laughing emojis. Or my favorite thing is to put on your favorite song and dance, 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 dance by yourself or with a broom. Extra credit if you sing along at the top of your lungs. Super silly stuff, right? Well, yes, but just bringing yourself into a state of joy, a state of ridiculous happiness is going to do a couple of things. One is that it's going to get you back onto your own paper where your power is, and off of his paper, his pessimistic paper, where you can't even get him to cheer up, right? And then you're going to get happy via getting silly. And you'll also be using your energy and your influence wisely because you getting happy could be the best thing that's happened to him all day. Your joy is contagious, and his pain about you not being happy, because that is painful to him, well, that's going to subside. So you may even see him be more positive, but at the very least, you'll be happy. Number two, SFP him. SFP him. This is the change your husband intimacy skill. SFP stands for, if you don't know, spouse fulfilling prophecy. Here's how you do it. Let's say your husband is always negative. That is your experience, which means it's also, get this, your current spouse fulfilling prophecy. Not on purpose. I know you didn't mean it to be. It was an accident. I didn't mean to have a spouse fulfilling prophecy that my husband was a loser, but I had one anyway without realizing it. And then I was experiencing exactly the spouse fulfilling prophecy that I was focused on as I continued to gather evidence that my assessment was correct. So I got to be right. So he seemed like a loser pants until I changed my spouse fulfilling prophecy. So if your husband seems like he's always negative, that's a pretty good indication that's what you're focused on, since what you focus on increases. So you could come up with a new spouse fulfilling prophecy that is more along the lines of what you want to experience. Think of it as changing the channel that you're watching. You're on the negativity channel. You'd like to be on the positivity or the happy channel. So maybe you'd flip it. Maybe you're always so negative would change to you always find a way to make things turn out well. Something like that. You can make up your own, although I will admit it can be tricky to do that by yourself because you're used to your old one right now, which makes it feel like the truth. But it's hard for anybody to be always negative. So, not to be mean, but I don't think that's true. He might be sometimes negative, but that means, get this, he's sometimes not negative. Said another way, he's sometimes positive. And you might be thinking, well, not very often. Well, that's because you aren't trained in SFP and choosing your focus yet. And it could be tricky to do an SFP by yourself. And if you're struggling with this one, I recommend you get a coach. This is why I train coaches because SFPs are powerful for getting a completely different response from your man, but you may need some support to do it. Number 3, get grateful. As long as you're being silly, happy, and speaking positivity into him instead of negativity, why not also make a list of at least 10 things that you're grateful for about your man? And then express your appreciation and happiness that he does or is those things to you. Maybe he takes out the trash or works to support the family, even if you do too. Or he cleans the yard or takes care of the cars or he handles the taxes. Just tell him 3 things a day. So instead of finding fault with his outlook, what about thanking him for what he's doing right? That sounds like something an optimist would do, right? And then watch out. You might be surprised to find that your husband, he sounds a lot more positive too. I have exciting news for you because right now you can listen to my book, The Empowered Wife, for free with your Audible membership in the United States. So discover the 6 surprising secrets to attract your man's time, his attention, his affection when you listen to the Empowered Wife audiobook on Audible without using credits. You don't need any credits. It's free. The Empowered Wife has over 1,700 5-star reviews, and it also has some 1-star reviews too, because not everybody is ready to hear what they can do to fix their relationship without their man even knowing about it. And I get it. I wasn't ready either until my marriage was completely falling apart and we were on the brink of divorce. And then I learned from women with happy marriages what actually works. And now my marriage is shiny and amazing. And those secrets are in this book. And you can listen to the whole book for free with your Audible membership. The only catch is that this Audible deal is only for a limited time. So to make your marriage last and thrive, go and listen for free with your Audible membership right now. My guest, Michelle, and her husband were having a lot of blowups and cold wars, and the temperature at her house was getting colder and colder. When she experimented with using just one cheat phrase, things got warmer fast. She kept going with the 6 intimacy skills, and today her marriage is happy, playful, safe, and loving. Michelle, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I am probably even more excited.
Cool, cool. I love it. Well, let's start with the bad old days. What was happening in your marriage?
So it was like I like to break it up into like 2 old bad days. It was like 2 different eras, let's say. Not really, but kind of. Which so first we got married and everything was great. Um, I looking back, obviously, I realized that like I was not doing all those terrible things right away because I was still like, in that like newlywed stage where like I was like, it's okay if he does those things, like any of the things that bothered me, I just let go. Like looking back, I realized that I was being surrendered then, but then I got into my, habits and malware running around in my brain. Um, so basically, we were like newly married, no kids yet. And obviously, like I'm like the number one communicator. Like everything you think or feel, you have to let your spouse know. Like that's just the basics of relationships.
Everyone knows that. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. I was like groomed. I was like the queen of like communication. Looking back, I realized I ruined a lot of relationships because of that. But thank God for the skills, and that really got me out of that. But let's just get back to there. Um, so I remember like looking back early on in my marriage, I right away, like a couple weeks after we got married, I was just like, you're not, my husband's more reserved, chilled out. He's not so expressive. And like when we were dating and engaged, I knew that, but like everything else counteracted it. So it was fine. Like, he was just the dashing young man that he still is today, but but you choose what you focus on. So I remember like telling him, you don't talk to me. You have to tell me things. You have to give me more compliments. You don't tell me all these things that I know you like I could tell you like, but you don't say any of these things. And like looking back, I remember like how broken he was when I told him that, but he just kept quiet and like things like continued to coast on. When it started to get really bad was we moved to a different country away from both our families. And so it was really just like us two very close knit together, there was no really other family around. And I remember when we would get into like these arguments, um, he would just like take off. He would just leave our apartment.
Oh,
He would just like walk out.
oh my gosh. You didn't know where he was going or when he was coming
What?
back or
Nothing.
oh, terrifying.
I didn't know if he hated it, if he was mad at me, or if it was him. Because like we have gotten into arguments before, and like he was like, "No, it's my problem. Like nothing to do with you." But like, so I'm gonna put this straight out. I didn't know what your own paper is. I used to pitch my tents on everybody else's paper. That's how I like to view it. Like I didn't have a paper. I needed to rent someone else's.
Paper. Yeah. You're like, where can I get a paper? There's one now. Okay. Yeah.
So looking back now, I realized I was just living on his paper. Anything he did, I had to control. No, he has to think this way. He has to do this way. I'm not being that mean. I'm amazing. All that stuff, if you know what I mean.
I do. I relate to you.
um,
Yes.
so, so I was literally when he started doing those things, that made me have the need to control him even more. I was like, "What are you doing?" I would call him 700 times. "What do you think you're doing? Where are you going? Come back, come back, come back," pleading, nagging, just like all those like things looking back. Oh my gosh.
Mhm. Well, because it makes sense, right? Because you were even more scared than you had been when he would just leave the apartment, not tell you where he's going, right? So that made you want to control even more, it sounds like.
Exactly. So I would call, so he would, at the beginning, being the nice guy that he is, so he would pick up and be like, no, I'm just going to air out whatever, and I'll be back or whatever. So that would calm me down. But I would still be like, I hope he still likes me, doesn't like me anymore. All that, go into that whole needless emotional turmoil.
Mm.
It was
Yeah.
a really, really sad place to be.
Oh, yeah.
I don't wish it on my worst enemy.
No, right. I remember it is a horrible place to be. And it sounds like it was happening kind of a lot, or at least regularly enough that you thought this is not no way to live.
Exactly. But then we would like kind of bounce back and be like, let's talk about it. And like like one time, so one time after like, so he would leave a lot and we would work it out, quote unquote. And then one day, I don't remember exactly, this is many years ago, but I just remember like the first real Cold War we had. He was just, it was like a couple months into our marriage, and he just like wasn't talking to me. So like he was saying what he needed to say, like yes, hello, goodbye, but like I was like, oh no, what is going on? That was like my first Cold War. I remember just like going nuts. And then he went out to work in the morning and I'm like, hello, are you gonna say goodbye? He's like, yeah, whatever. Like he was just like basically just ignoring me, cold
Wow.
shoulder,
And this is
passive
you're
aggressive.
still newlyweds, basically. And so was part of you thinking like, this is not normal, this is not healthy, this is not how it should be?
Yeah. I always like I was brought up in I'm the youngest, second youngest of a very large family. And let's just like my parents' marriage wasn't the greatest. Let's just put it that way. And they're both amazing people, but my mom doesn't have the empowered wife. So, and then everybody has their own side of the streets. But
Sure.
so I always was like, I'm never gonna have that. I made this whole like vision for myself that I'm gonna control. Because then again, I was the youngest of a large family where in order to really get anything I wanted, I had to control it, and then I would get it. So
Mm,
my whole life, till I'm in my 20s, I'm like, whatever I want, I control to get.
yeah. Yeah. And that was working for you. So
Yeah, it
that's how you
worked,
were trained, really. Right? Yeah.
basically.
Makes sense. It makes sense.
So sorry, yeah, were you going to say something?
Well, I'm just wondering, like, so so this is, you're just bringing that forth into your marriage, the way you were trained. And then I hear like for a while, you were respectful because you were just like, you're badly in love in the beginning, right? And so, but then you kind of, then it just went back to what you knew worked, what you, how you were trained. And, but was there a moment where you felt like, okay, we can't go on like this?
So that's a little bit later on
Okay.
in my story where like it really got like that. But I just want to add in to what you were saying that like I was madly in love, but I also really respected him. I had like a great amount of respect. Looking back, I realized that's what it was. But then what happened? My respect started to dwindle because when a person does these things, Cold
Right.
War is not talking to their wife, then the respect starts going down and down and down. And I was like, a person can't do that. Only bad husbands do that. Like
That's right.
I had a
Yeah.
very like judgmental type of like way of looking at life. Like either you were good or bad. I'm very black and white type of person. So like if you're doing those things, then like that's so that's not worthy of respect. Subconsciously, this was all subconscious. Now looking back, I see that
Right.
that's what happened. But there was just a lot like then my respect just started going down and down and down. So I remember so that one day, so he just like it was like the first Cold War, and I called him up in the middle of the day and I'm like, you cannot come back home unless you talk to me. And if you want to come back to this house, you have to talk to me. And I hung up and I ran to one of my friends. I had a couple of friends living in the city where I was living. So I ran to them and just cried and yelled and screamed and said, this is what's going on. And I don't know what's happening. And, my friend told me, it was very nice. She's like, he's a man, you're a woman. Like, we're two different creatures. Like, you have to just learn. This is what early, she was married for a long time at that point. So she's like, this is like, you just have to live with it. And you have to just get used to that you're newly married. You barely know each other. Like she goes, it could take 10 years for you to really get to know really who your husband is. To like really get all your idiosyncrasies, she gave me this whole speech. So like it calmed me down, but like, and then I went home and he was supposed to come home, let's say like 7 o'clock that night. And I come home and like, it was like, I don't know, 4 or something. And he walks through the door and he had this whole long letter and saying, like, apologizing. And it was all, his problems and da 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 da. So that's just being the great, amazing guy that he is. But that
Wow.
just reinforced that it wasn't my issue.
That's right. It was all him.
I'm
I
like,
love though you kind of had
oh,
an angel intervene and say, this is, you're a man, or he's a man, you're a woman. We're two different creatures. That give you some insights, it sounds like that day too.
yes, it did. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay, so definitely you're perfect. He is not. That's been
Exactly.
reinforced now. Okay. So then what happened?
So then we actually moved back. I was pregnant and then I had a baby. Then that's where things started going really downhill. Because a man could do no right when you have a baby. They don't know how to change the diaper properly. They don't know how to burp. They don't know what the baby needs. They can't tell if he's sick or if he's not, all that stuff.
None of that. I can't do any of it. Okay. Gotcha.
So he was actually amazing. Like I have to like give him more credit. Like he is an amazing dad. Like all my brothers, I love my brothers. I have a lot of them, but like they don't know how to take care of kids. And like he totally was, and like they're not so good at helping out. Like they are, but like no, I didn't grow up with like the girls did all the things, all those type of things. So even though he was so helpful, like still, like there was just a lot of criticism and like in my even if I did, I'm like I try to be a nice person, so like even if I didn't put him down specifically, like my energy preceded me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
You were the mother, you knew best, and he was just
exactly,
there to help. Yeah. So, and he wasn't
exactly,
that great at it, apparently. So, yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
I get it.
So it was really, really like I could really I'm like getting emotional thinking about it. Like it was it was really hard. Like then the blow up started again. My husband doesn't, he's like the most calm, humble, gentle, like whenever we had problems and I would call a friend, I would be like, and if anybody would ever know about our problems, they would say it's all my fault and not his fault. Even my own family, because he's such an angel. Like he could do no wrong. But somehow, between us two, then the blow up started and he started just like leaving me with a baby. Like we would be doing something and be like, I have to go. Or he wouldn't say I have to go and just walk out.
Wow. Terrifying.
Completely terrifying, but me being the controlling person, like if only I would know, just like could be a lot of those blowups were his issue. Like he was overreacting or any of that stuff. So I should have stayed on my own paper and relinquished control of his mood. But what I did was like literally chase after him, close the door, stand in front. You don't even know how many times we had like standoffs, like me standing by the door. Like that's when it started getting worse and worse. Like he's like, I have to go, I can't. And it was bad.
Yeah, it sounds hard. It sounds rough. I mean, you were just trying to keep you guys together and not be left alone with the baby and not knowing when he was going to come back. And that's all you had was to stand at the door, try to block him. And but I hear the urgency and the desperation and how painful that was.
Also, there was such it was so polarized because to this day, we still, even throughout our biggest breakdown, we had this like passionate love between us. And like it would go up and down. Like we would have these like breaks of it being amazing, amazing. Like our physical intimacy was always amazing. Like it was, so I was like, what? I couldn't wrap my head around it. It was like emotional torture.
Just running hot and cold like that. Yeah, and so unpredictable. It sounds like because you didn't know what was causing him to take off. It was just something about him, probably. You didn't realize that you had any power along those lines, probably.
Exactly.
In
I
fact, you
knew
felt like
I
you
was
didn't because you're blocking the door and he'd still leave, right? So yeah, yeah.
exactly. So then COVID hit.
Oof.
Yeah, so we were home together a lot. I got sick with it for a bit. And also I we found out I was pregnant again. So I want to have a lot of kids and like but so we weren't like specifically preventing it, but like I knew like I wanted to have close together, but like not that close. So here I was, I had a few-month-old baby. He was only like 4 months old, 5 months old. And I was pregnant again.
Wow.
Thank God she's a precious gift, but But it was really hard. So it just amped things up
Rough.
more because it went straight from pregnancy, postpartum, back into pregnancy. So it amplified everything even more.
Yeah.
And all this time I'm living on his paper, right? So,
We're not knowing it, but yeah.
yeah,
Not even knowing what a
exactly.
paper was, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So it was really hard and we were together and so it was great, but then it was hard. It was those wars, but like up and down, but we were living in the same house locked up. And I needed just help. I needed, extra help. And like he was helping, but it wasn't enough. My son had a lot of colic. There was just, it was, we were up all night, all day, all night, all day, no break. Like I even
Oh,
wanted to work. That's how,
oh
like,
God.
just to
Yeah.
get a
Get me
break.
away from yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it got to a point I was like, I'm like, listen, we both have our childhood baggage that, we brought into our marriage and life, and we were aware of that. And we both had done therapy before. But life was good, so we stopped. We both had done it before we got married. And I was like, listen, buddy, we need to go to therapy. Like, we need to.
Couples counseling. Yeah.
Yes.
Or okay.
Yes. So I'm like just to figure out I couldn't put my finger in it. I was always the one helping my friends. Like I was like the seeker of help. I used to like I have a whole like support system of mentors and guides and everything. And and I couldn't and like I was able to figure out like put my finger on what the problem is. I was always able to problem solve and I couldn't figure it out. So the only thing that I could turn to was that my husband had a lot of childhood trauma. So I was just pinning it on that. And then I'm like, he has so many issues. He apparently took care of it, but he didn't. I also have issues. I agree I have issues. See, this was my problem. Like I was very accountable, quote unquote, but I wasn't on my own paper, so I was just like always pushing, like, yeah, but he. Yeah, I have issues also. Maybe I blow up also, and this and that. But like, I could never. I was never like fully just owning it and staying on my side of the street.
Yeah. Wow, I get it. I relate to that. So yeah. So you guys went to marriage counseling?
So first he was resistant, and finally we went. Finally, he's like after like the first month of the COVID, or no, it was like 2 months later. Um, and he was like, okay, I agree with you. So I found one. So this is where this part of the story will be surprising to you, but he was actually amazing.
Oh, no, that's great. That's
He
great.
was literally amazing. Like he's pro, like everything you say, he's not, there's no such thing as divorce and he doesn't only do
Oh,
marriage counseling, but for him, there was no such thing as divorce. He's like, you guys are amazing. He goes, I see couples come in that are nowhere near as connected or as
oh,
on the same page as you, and we're going to make this work. There's problems, but we're going to make this work.
that's awesome. He sounds wonderful.
Yes, he really was. I really owe a lot to him because he really did help us out. So, so those first few months, so things started to settle down because my husband also felt like he's very similar to it was like straight from God. Like he's very similar. He has a very similar personality to my husband. So there was very good chemistry there, and he felt very validated, and so that already changed things. So we realized he did point a lot of fingers at me,
Oh,
the therapist,
rude.
and like yeah. So and I realized looking back, like what big reason why I was so successful was that he helped us be vulnerable. He helped me like be vulnerable on my paper, really. Like whenever I was always so vulnerable, but like I was always pointing fingers and always so angry, but like I was able to be like there was a safe space for me to like cry and like just not doing it in such a pointing way, even though I did do it. That's why at the end of the day it didn't help.
Oh,
But it helped us get through like that chunk of time.
but it sounds like it gave you a lot of hope for your marriage too. You kind of framed it as in like, you guys are super connected. This is going to work. There's just a few problems. We'll fix them up. Right?
Exactly.
Someone kind of spoke into your marriage that it was there was a lot, there was more good in it. And that
Exactly.
was,
Exactly.
yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of this is normal with couples. Two people come together with two
Oh
different
yeah.
backgrounds
Oh
and they're
yeah.
living in the same house and then they're bringing up kids and
Yeah.
just,
And like your
yeah,
friend said, you're a woman, he's a man. That's like, yeah, that's a big challenge right there sometimes. So
exactly.
yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So those I had to say, so the blow ups and the Cold Wars were happening like so frequent. It was like almost daily at that point. And then when we started counseling, and that really was working for us. So like it went down to like once a week, then like once a month, and then we would be going months. Like it was like things were really good. Of course, there was like breakdowns, and also the whole time at the end of the day, even though it was restoring the peace, I still felt such a weight of like, because I realized I had to restrain myself a lot, but like there was no like I was still so judgmental of myself and so harsh on myself. There was no like it
Hmm.
was like still very heavy for me. Like I still felt like all my needs weren't getting met. And like it was still like as long as I stay like, keeping not reacting and doing all my things, like things will stay calm. But then and then it started, like I got it down to science. I realized like so it was like 6 months of like nothing. It was like peaceful and great. And there were some blowups here and there, but like things that we were able to like we were had a session in 2 days, so we were able to hold it out to then, and then we worked it out. So but then it was like once every 6 months, it was like before a holiday, and I had our second kid, and he's like, sorry, I'm taking one, you take the other. I'm going to my parents. You figure out what you want to do.
Oh my gosh. Wait, like like split up for the
Yeah,
day?
I don't know.
Oh my gosh. Like all of a sudden out of the blue. And you're thinking like everything's fine, everything's better. We're not having the blow ups. And
Yeah,
out of the,
it was.
oh, ouch.
I feel
Scary.
like I'm starting to tear up talking about it. Like, I was like, what do you mean? We were doing so well.
I did not see that coming. So,
But he was like, just for the holiday, just for, 2 days. But what? No one knew about our issues in our families. Like,
and this
what?
was letting them know there's
Yeah,
an
he was like
issue.
having no problem. Like that, just that's dropping a bomb on everyone.
Yes, especially you.
Exactly. And I went into meltdowns. Like, literally, my baby was 7 days old, and he's like, I think we should get divorced.
Oh, oh no.
So we had a 12-month-old baby.
Oh, and a seven
Yes.
day.
Yeah,
And he's saying we should get divorced.
yeah,
Oh my gosh. Worst day of your life, I'm sure. It sounds
yeah.
awful.
I'm telling you, I don't wish it upon anyone.
Oh,
My worst enemy, like I still remember at this moment, like the darkness, the loneliness, the abandonment, like, but like we loved each other so much, and I never experienced this relationship with anyone else in my life, that we had this like crazy connected passion, and like what?
awful, Michelle. So what happened?
So looking back, like these were just cries for help, of like cries of like disrespect. Let me be my own person. Stop controlling me. He wasn't. The next morning, he woke up. This was at night, and I called our therapist. I told him what happened. He was like, I was hyperventilating, so he was just trying to like calm me down. He's like, so we'll talk tomorrow. We'll meet up. We'll figure it out. And like the next morning, he wakes up. It was still a Cold War, but like he pretended as everything was like he didn't say drop the worst word of my life. By the way, I have to give you just more background of like to anyone when their husband says divorce, it's bad. But my husband, like, you don't say that word ever. I once made a joke when we were engaged. like one of those like marriage jokes that like ended it like the word had some divorce word in it or whatever. And like I said it to him and he like stops and he's like, "We don't ever say that word." I was like,
Oof.
"Ooh, I was just saying a joke." Like,
Yeah.
so I never brought up that word, even in a joke, in anything, we don't say that word. That's what my husband told me years before.
So this really means something for him to be saying that
So he
word. Yeah.
dropped that word and I literally thought I was dying.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Like your life is over. This is so
Exactly.
hard, so scary.
So, but really, so then he dropped that word, but then he like just went on with life. And like he has never brought it, he never said sorry, but during another breakdown, he did bring it up, but like in that time, it was
It
like
didn't come up again.
exactly.
Okay. So you just go back
So
to
so when
regular
but he
life?
did say he wanted to go to his parents without me for the holiday, and then like I somehow finagled a conversation out of him, like, "I'm sorry, we're gonna make this work. I don't want to do this." And like he was okay with it, and like everything ended up being okay.
Wow. But that would make you anxious for a long time, I would think.
It made me into a bundle of nerves as one big
Yeah.
anxiety like ridden human.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So then what
And
happened?
so that's what happened. So that was what was going on for the next like 2 years. Things were good. We kept the peace with the therapy. It was working. I thought it was working for me, you know? And then every 6 months, it happened 4 times.
Oh,
We can't do this, we can't do this. Da, da, da. So we were
wow.
in therapy for like it was like 2.5 years at this point, and we had another baby.
Yeah. Oh,
But things were doing really well, like in between the second, like after the second, like we had those blowups, but then like things got to a place where like those 6 months, it was great. And
yeah.
like even our therapist saw like improvement, and my husband started being more verbal and vocal, and like he agreed also. Like, and he never like agrees with these things. So like he was agreeing also. I was like, so that's when like I calmed down. I was like, okay, we're good. Like we're okay.
Yeah. So there were real highs and real bad lows.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you just didn't know. I guess you could kind of set your clock by it though, because it was every 6 months
Yeah.
it's falling
It literally
apart.
went down to, I told you, like at the beginning, it wasn't like to science. But then after like a year, I was like, I told one of my friends, I was like, yeah, it's a science, 6 months. I would call her up and be like, can you help me? It's 6 months later.
Wow.
So I'm like, and now he wants to separate again. And now, but like he would say, just for a day, just then he started saying, I need to just leave for 3 days. I need to go to my parents' summer home. I'm just gonna leave for 3 days. We were barely making it through the day with our two babies. This was before my third kid. We were barely making, we weren't enough people for two little they were twins basically.
Yeah, they
They were
were
Irish twins. They
basically.
were less
That's
than a year
right.
apart.
Yes, yes.
So we were barely making the day. He's like, yeah, I just need to leave. I was like, no, you can't do that. And then I would drag him to the therapist, and he would be like, I'd be like, you have to hold him to the fire. You have to say he, like, I'm out. I would even like say, I'd be like, I'm out if he doesn't, if he continues to do this.
Like I want a divorce if he keeps.
Exactly, exactly. That's what,
Yeah.
look, I didn't really mean it, but I was just,
No, you were just trying to get him to see how serious you were, to really
exactly,
listen. You were trying to get him to really see what was at stake. Yeah.
exactly. It was really, really painful.
Oof.
So, meanwhile, by the way, all this time, I called like I was controlling everything. Like I would call people he was close to and call him and tell him he's not to do this. It was terrible. It was really terrible. But like all this time, no one in our families knew anything besides for one of my sisters. One of the times that he was about to leave, he said for 3 days. My sister lived nearby, and she came home over and she blocked him at the door also. She's
Mm.
like, you can't leave. You have two babies. I don't care if it's just for a day. You can't leave your wife. So imagine the
Wow.
disrespect he felt then also.
Well,
Just
well, just and everybody's pain in that situation. She's trying to help. She's trying to
exactly.
help you and your family. Um, oh man, it sounds rough. So what happened?
So I just need to say one little story just to show how my husband, just to like give a little peek into how my husband felt. I told you he's a calm, gentle, never raises his voice type of person, like an angel, literal. People laughed at our like match because like I am this vivacious, outgoing, loud, say it as it is, and he's just like so respectful and calm,
Oh,
and like had a great sense of humor, but like in that like underhanded way, and like so so one time when he was about to leave the house, I locked the door and stood in front of it while I was holding my little baby who was like just 4 or 5 months old, and he like tried to physically move me out of the way. And I was like, nope, nope. And then all of a sudden, we lived in an apartment, a ground floor apartment. And all of a sudden, he went to the back of the apartment and was gone. I waited for like 15 minutes. I'm like, okay, he's not, he went back to our room. And then I go to our room and he's not there. And then I go to the extra bedroom and the screen is out.
he climbed out the window.
He climbed out the window.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Awful. Oh,
This is like, I'm saying this because just to show, like,
the level
looking
of
back,
desperation everybody was feeling.
exactly.
Oh, so painful.
So then we it was after we had our third kid and she was a couple months old, and it was actually my husband. We both knew we didn't want to stay in the city we were living, and we eventually wanted to move back to where my parents live. So my husband got a job offer there a couple of months before, but we're like, not yet, I just had a baby, like, we're not yet. And then came like the summer, so it was in between school for the kids. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. We're gonna move. So I was so excited. Like it's my like dream city. I love it. It's my like happiest place in the world. And he likes it also. He had gone to school there and he has a support system here. And he like we were on the same page to move. So I was very happy about that because a lot of times I told you I'm controlling. So I was always controlling like, where to go and what to
We're gonna
do.
move. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But this time was like it was totally like even him leading the way. And things were like I told you, it was in between the 6 months.
Right.
So things were good. And we moved back and he was like an absolute hero. He was amazing. Oh my gosh, it was a ton of, stuff to take care of and do, moving with three little babies. Um, and all of a sudden, right when we moved, he moved with me and the kids, and he went back and went with the moving truck and drove our second car back, like 9 hour drive. So, so when he came back, like something was off. We were just like, something was off. We weren't like we were getting into fights, obviously, like arguments, because like that's what happens when you move. It's like
Oh
one of
yeah.
the hardest things,
It's never
people
a good
say
day
in
to
life
move. Yeah,
is
yeah.
moving. So, um, and like we just started getting into a lot more arguments again, and like
Oh,
something broke, and there was this like cold like ice between us, like for weeks and weeks and weeks. Like we were doing all the things, we did the move, we were, settling in and all that stuff. And we did have, some good days in between, but like even that, there was just something going on. And my husband started lashing out, even lashing out at me. He raised his voice for the first time in his life, like raising his voice. And he started raising his voice at the kids.
oh no.
I was like, what is going on? And I was literally going crazy. And then that was at the point we never graduated therapy because we just kept on having these blowups every 6 months. And that's when therapy went downhill. Like he wasn't like, it used to be like we left the sessions, most of the sessions, like we both felt good. And I started feeling like he was like, just, okay, is it over? And like, we'll walk away. We were doing it over Zoom at this point because now we were long distance. And it was getting really bad. He's like, I can't continue to live with you if we're gonna continue, if there's something up, there's just, we can't get it. We can't get it. And I would just go to sleep sobbing nightly. And I would call my friends and vent and vent and vent. And like being the good friend, it was specifically, let's say one friend that she was just validating me. And we were just focusing on how like that's not okay, that's
God, he
unhealthy.
was. Yeah.
Oh, he has PTSD.
Yes. Yes. He's definitely got a diagnosis for sure. Yes. Yeah.
100%. No, I didn't even tell you. So it was getting so bad, the therapy. And I was calling our therapist behind his back, and he knew. I'm like, this is what he's doing. Before each session, let me just brief you. And he knew it. He cornered me after. He goes, you keep on calling her. Sorry, I can't come to you keep on calling him. I can't continue to do this. Like you're on his side. There's a conflict of interest.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So I was like, okay, fine, I'll stop. I'll go. I see I have issues. I'll go to therapy and you'll continue with him.
Okay.
That was very good for me for like crying my head off and venting, but we just together with the therapist and my friend, we just kept on focusing. Oh my gosh, he did that. Oh my gosh, he did that. Because things he never did before in his life. So we're like, oh, it has to be that something broke, like something
Something
snapped. He has
happened. Yeah.
PTSD. The cortisol in his brain is just going haywire, you know?
Yeah. So you solved the problem by figuring out what was wrong. But did that help your marriage?
No, it did not. And things were
No.
just getting worse and worse. We went to his family for like the next holidays that came up. And I only found this out afterwards, but like his family was freaking. He was like yelling at the kids in front of his family. Like we're talking about, I keep on repeating it. Like my husband is this calm, gentle, humble,
Yeah.
kind
This isn't
soul.
like him. This is
Never
not
in his life, I never even saw him. Like even his parents could be obnoxious to him. He would never always respectful, never respond back. Like I never saw him fight with a sibling.
so you're like, who is this guy? Where's the guy I married? And who's this that's
Yeah,
showing up now?
yeah, he literally turned into a monster for what he was.
So scary. All right. So then what
I was
happened?
losing my mind. So then what happened? Thank God. It was terrible. It was getting worse and worse and worse. And then it was the summer again. So it was almost a year after we moved. And we had gone back to the town that we used to live in for all those years. Because I had a niece's wedding. And we decided we're just going to move in for like 2 weeks. And like, it was actually like a self-care kind of thing. Like we really enjoyed, we got to do all our things we always did. And it was like a vacation for 2 weeks. But he was just horrible. Like it went back. Now we went back down to everyday blow-ups. It was like once a week. It was like it was the 6 months, then it was once a month. Then it was like every day. I told you when something broke, it was like every day. But this was like really every day. Like it was every day when I said every day, but like not every day. This was like every couple times a day, just like, why are you doing that? What? Like literally yelling at me. He never used to yell at me. I was like, what did I get myself into? This
Yeah. And how am
horrible
I going to get out of
marriage.
this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, literally. I had 3 kids. I'm telling you now, I even told my friend, I said, if I had no kids, I would have left.
Wow.
That's how bad I felt. So we're like on our, mini vacation. I have a ton of family there. Also, where we went back for 2 weeks, and it was my niece's wedding. And one of my cousins, who's like my best friend, who she was also a big support when I was living back in that town. Like, because she also struggled in her marriage, and like we were like in it together, like, this is marriage and we're gonna figure it out. And because I had moved, we just hadn't been in touch.
Yeah.
But she does hair and she was doing my hair for the wedding. So it was just me and her. I went to her house and she's doing my hair for the wedding. And I was like, you know, I'm like, honey, we haven't spoken in like a year normally, but like things are really bad. She's like, what? She's like, she goes, I hadn't heard from you in a long time, and like I just assumed everything was great because like no news is good news. I was like, you, and I started like I just spilled everything out. I'm like, you don't know how it's been going. She's like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. I feel so bad. She goes, did you ever hear of Laura Doyle?
Hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, actually, you wouldn't believe it. I should have said this earlier in the story. After my husband said he wanted to get a divorce, wanted a divorce, like when my baby was 7 days old, a different one of my friends, like it was like God's hand, but somehow you can't see what's right in front of you. She's like, she was getting married, she was engaged, getting married, and she was talking to a friend of her, like an old, like her friend's mom, who's a therapist. And she's like, I'm getting married in a couple of months and I want to just like read whatever I could read. And she had recommended The Surrendered Wife to her. So she tells me, she's like, she goes, I didn't read it. I bought it for myself, but I brought so many other books. You could have it if you want. Like she knew I also like regular marriage stuff, but like she knew
Yeah.
she's like, I'm gonna send it to you. She was in a different country. She sent The Surrendered Wife to my house and I didn't read it.
Well, you had a 7-day-old baby for one thing, but yeah,
Literally, that's what it
okay.
was. I was like, it's so nice. I'm like, it's really nice of you. I heard of you. I heard of the name, but like, I'm like, I've heard people talk about it, but like, you know how many marriage books I bought?
Yeah, right.
You know
There's
how
a
many
lot of marriage
marriage?
books
Yeah.
out there.
Do you know how many marriage
And
books?
also that title, who really wants to read The Surrendered Wife anyway? Right? Like sounds awful.
It's true. No, so I have to go back when my baby was 7 days old and it came in the mail. I was like, I read like the first like couple of pages, and whenever you wrote, I was like, yeah, it sounds like me, but like, who says this is gonna work? I've read four other of them
Yeah,
and it's not working. And
exactly.
I'm working so much on myself in therapy. I'm like, maybe a different time in life.
Right, right,
And I put
right,
it on
right.
the shelf.
Not right now. Yeah, yeah,
So much so when we moved, my husband's like, when we were unpacking, he's like, where should I put this book? I'm like, I'll put it in the basement.
yeah, yeah, right. You could donate that one. Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, so let's get back to the story. So she's like, do you ever hear of Laura Doyle? And I'm like, yeah, I did. I read like a page or two, but like, ugh, I can't. It's too much work for me. I'm like in therapy, like I will be for a different time. She's like, no, so actually I never read her books, but because she's a hairdresser and she does hair, she spends a lot of time like not, she also does a lot of wigs. So like she spends hours like with no one in the room and she needs to listen to something. She's like, you always need to listen to something when you're working. So she has this, it's called the Empowered Wife podcast. She has a podcast. I'm telling you, it's really good. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. She's like, I'm telling you, I heard these stories. People have like legit physically abusive husbands and it ends out in like bliss. I'm like, really? Okay.
That doesn't sound true. Wait, right? Weren't you kind of
Yeah.
skeptical? Like,
If I had a physically abusive husband, I would have been out long ago.
yeah,
Like, that's
yeah.
not like what? So like, even though like I'm pretty narrow-minded, I do have that open-minded like streak. I was like, cool, like that sounds cool. Like I want to hear something new. Like that's something cool. So I told you 9 hours away from where we live. So it wasn't like the next day, but a few days later when we drove back, I put it on and I didn't stop listening. One podcast after the next. I was binging like you've never seen. I listened to the whole way back. I didn't even talk to my,
Well, cool.
I was
Yeah.
like, she is on to something. But like, I didn't even know what to say or what to do. I was like, I just need to listen. I just need to listen. So I wasn't like practicing anything. I have to put in, I was already practicing duct tape technically before I even heard any of the stories because anything I said, my husband would pounce on.
Yeah.
So I was just like quiet. I was like, I'm just gonna keep quiet. But it didn't really work because I was all over his paper when I was doing that. I was like, is he gonna scream now? Is he gonna scream? Like, even if I was quiet, it didn't work. It wasn't really working. Like he said, he's like,
Like
oh, so
walking
you're
on
not gonna talk to
eggshells.
me now? Oh, so
Yeah.
now you're just gonna ignore me?
Yeah.
So it wasn't like really working. There was still a lot of hostility, but like I was just like being as quiet as I could be. But like from before I read it. Then before I heard the stories, then I was like, oh my goodness, wow. So I was like, I have the book. I ran downstairs to the basement. I unearthed The Surrendered Wife, and I was just like reading it and reading it and reading it. My husband was just like, what is going on?
Okay. Yeah, I bet. I think it's like, what's happening? Wow.
Anyways, so what happened was, it was a few weeks before I did anything, like before I was really like practicing anything. I guess you could say duct tape. I was just like quiet, but it was still like pretty hostile. And then I was like, I should say something, like there's cheat phrases, so I should say them, but like I don't know when. And and at that moment, like when we came home from our trip, he was like just every morning storming around the house. Like we had to get the kids out. I work, he works. So like getting out the kids, and he was continuing to do like, oh, I'm just leaving. But like he would just like walk out and leave me with the three kids to take care of in the morning. So one morning, like a week or two later, after I started listening to the podcast, he wakes up all stormy. I'm like, hey, I'm just gonna pretend. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna practice like as if like his emotions don't exist. And he's like, and you just did that, and da da da. And I'm not. I'm leaving. And he walked out, and I didn't do any screaming or yelling or following after or running to the door and saying, come back, come back. No, net, nothing. I just said, okay. And he walked out. And I just calmly, I was like, as I pulled together like all the strength I could possibly muster. And like, I was like, it's okay. Like, what will happen? Nothing. I'll get the kids ready myself. I could do it. And within like 20 minutes, he was back.
Oh my gosh.
And then he goes, and you know why I left? And he starts giving me this whole thing. And I said, oh, I could say something. I could say, I'm like, I hear you.
Oh,
And he starts helping the kids get ready and took them all out.
oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
He
Were
just
you,
took them. He's like,
were you
have a good day. And he
shocked?
left.
Were you shocked?
I I couldn't pick my jaw off the floor.
Right? Like you're like falling out of your chair.
I
What?
was, this
Okay.
woman is on to something. I don't care what anybody else says. Because I did have some like negative, like I've heard some people say, oh, what like about your book, like, oh, the surrendered wife, that is like so ancient, or like, so I did have some of those. I was like, no, 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 no. When that happened, one thing I said, I hear you. Not only did I was waiting for him to be like, no, you don't hear me or something. And he takes the kids and literally helps
Oh
me, literally like an
gosh.
like a hero. Like he just
Oh
picked
my
up the
gosh.
slack and just got them all out, whisked them off, and I was left myself to take care of me.
Oh my God. And this is the very thing. Like when you were standing trying to block the door, this is the reaction that you were probably hoping you would get, right? That he would go,
Ex-
okay, you're right. I better help you with the kids. And then, yeah. And that never worked. He would just
Never.
stay gone.
It always did the opposite. He just pushed back harder. This was like how you always say, so counterintuitive.
It's so counterintuitive, isn't it? It's like kind of crazy, really. But so it's working. So you're like, okay, yay, this is working. Like I hear you, and also duct tape were the two skills you started with.
So
So okay, so then what happened?
so I was like, sign me up. I went onto Amazon. I ordered the book. We were actually going back to New York for another wedding. It was like crazy. I had like two family weddings a month apart, but we live like 9 hours away. So we were going back. We were going back in like 2 days. So I wouldn't, like, I wanted to get it as soon as possible. I literally ordered it to where we
What
were
did you
going.
order? What did you order?
Oh, sorry. I went on Amazon and I ordered The Empowered Wife because I
The
had
Empowered
Surrendered
One.
Wife, but I knew
Okay.
that The Empowered Wife was the newer one. Which great job. You did a great job because it was much clearer. More reason why I put down Surrendered Wife, it was just like, I didn't know where to start. Like here, it's just like broken down, 6 skills, like 1, 2, 3. It was just like so much so much more clear. So I literally ordered it to where we were going, and like my husband, like I never order things to somewhere rent. Like all of a sudden we get this thing in the mail when we arrived. I was like, I need a package. Could you go to the mailbox? And I literally hid it. You're like, can you keep a secret? I literally like in my bed, like I like hid it on like the side of our bed. It was really funny. And I didn't stop reading and I didn't stop listening to the podcast. Wait, oh no, that was that day. It was September 1st, actually. We got it. I got the book, I think September 1st, and I was listening to the podcast and I was like, let me just, I never even like went online. I went online and you were having a master class in 3 minutes. So I signed up to the master class that was in 3 minutes.
I love it. Wow.
Oh, so I just did sign me up, sign me up, sign me up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I want it all button.
Because it just kept on working. What else did I do? Trying to remember. I don't know. I was just like trying to stay on, like relinquish control of his mood was I would say that like the number one. Like I hear you actually listening to him and relinquishing control of his mood. And like, so things were still rough in those first few weeks, but then I signed up for coaching and like she was, yeah, like you say, a fairy godmother.
Oh, I love it. Wow.
So I read the book and I was listening to the podcast. Like it was only Laura Doyle for those first few weeks. Like I wasn't like seeing or thinking or anything because it was working.
Yeah. So you felt hope and relief. Like
Yeah.
there's a future here that's going to be the kind of marriage you want to have. And instead of feeling like the rug's being pulled out from under you all the time, you started to understand what was like where your power was, where your influence was. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oof. I feel relieved just hearing about that. Right? Like so exciting. Oh my gosh. Okay, so what else? What other skills did you try?
So the thing is that I I did all your skills. I was like a number one self-care person my whole life. Like all this stuff, but it was the intention that was missing. I was doing self-care like I need this for myself. And like when, well, you know what I'm saying? So a lot of, no, not always, I'll give myself credit. Like I did a lot of self-care, like, oh, I always going out with my girlfriends, getting my mani-pedis, doing like all the things I love to do, like I did in high school, you know, all that stuff. Like I was always into like taking care of myself, but because with the kids and the heavy schedule and like, so I would stick it in, but like not as often as I should and also the intention. So like when things were getting really bad right before the summer, I was literally like falling apart. And I was like, I need to go away with my friends. And my husband, being like the best man that he is, he's like, I was like, I need to go to Miami tomorrow. I need to go. And my friend is like, oh my gosh, God bless her. She's like, yeah, whenever you're ready to go, I'm picking up with you and I'm gonna go.
Oh.
So I told my husband, I'm like, I'll take care of everything and I'm going. Like it was like a Thursday. I booked for Sunday night. I think it was Sunday night, yeah. Um, and he's like, sure, yeah, you can go. So like I did that like major self-care. I went to Miami with a girlfriend. I haven't done that since I got married, and it was always a dream. This was before the skill. So this is like I was really good at self-care, but like I was like still like with that negative energy of like in spite of my husband, like because I'm feeling this, I have to leave you with the kids. I took care of everything, but like, but it was all
Not
under control. And like, so in order to do self-care, I have to take care of anything and tell you exactly what to do with the kid, your own children.
your own children. Exactly. Yeah. So not a ton of gratitude in the self-care or yeah, appreciation for how he was taking all the kids for that time, even though you set everything up.
Right,
So
exactly.
yeah, yeah. So then post skills. So you got your hands on the skills. What did you do differently with your self-care?
So I was just like, I need to get a mani-pedi. And he was like, sure. And I went without telling him what to do with the kids.
Ah, So there
And
was no control in it.
no,
Okay,
and then would come
gotcha.
home and everything was just fine.
Oh,
And
you didn't have to make all those preparations so that he would
no,
right way his own kids. Oh my
and
gosh.
and I let him be a dad of his own kids. Like he's like like I used to tell him like, oh, give that first. I trained him so much. He would be like, what should I give the kids? And like whatever you think, you know.
Wow. Wow.
I would get pushback from that. He'd be like, what do you mean, whatever you think? Like my husband's very smart. So he realized I was like doing something because he
Yeah,
saw
yeah, of
all of
course.
it.
Of course.
But
Yeah.
like, but I was like, no, for real. Like, I don't know, give whatever fruit, vegetables, whatever you want. I'm like, now it took time for me. I still would tell him what to do, but like even like last week, I was like, I can't make the lunches. And like he made them the healthiest, most
No,
amazing lunches
no
for all three
way.
kids.
You're kidding. Oh my gosh. Okay. Wow. So this seems like a miracle, first of all. All right.
So he always had that part wasn't such a miracle because he was so helpful. He was always so helpful, but I was always
Okay.
telling him how to do it.
Okay. Okay. Because you thought he wouldn't. So, like,
Exactly. Like he was
but
always
he
like,
would. He would. I mean, apparently he would. Right. We find out. Now we find out. All right. So, what was the miracle, would you say?
when was the miracle?
I mean, what was, you said that part wasn't the miracle. So, what?
Oh, the miracle was that all of a sudden, so that first week, let's go back. I'm sorry, I'm all like ADD all over the place. Because there's just so much. There was so much good, but like, so not only that, so I hear you, that whole moment where I'm like, everything was back. He called me later that day, and like, then like the next day he comes home from work and he's just like going, this is my husband, like who in good days, he's just like not a he doesn't like, he's a man. Like he's not like telling you like a girl sitting there talking your ear off after her day of work that this happened for 20 minutes. Like he's just doesn't like that. He comes home from work one day and he's like just talking and talking and talking. And he's like, I don't even know why I'm saying this. I'm like, I
Opening
do.
up. You're like, I do.
Emotional.
I do.
There was so much more emotional safety just in that one, I hear you, that he was telling me about things that I always want to hear about, just like the stupidest things. Like, just tell me about your day. And this guy said that, and this person did that. And like, he's like, he goes, it's such a stupid story. I don't even know why I told you.
Wow. And you were loving it because it's intimacy, it was connection.
Yes.
Oh. Okay. Now, what about these blow ups? Did those ever happen
No, they
now?
stopped cold
They
turkey.
stopped? Wait, how long ago was that? More than 6 months?
Like, one second. September, October. Hold on, let me count. It's just a couple of months ago. November, December, January. It's not, it's just now 6 months, but
No,
it's
6 months.
for a full, I'll tell you the truth, for a full month, there was not one, he went back to himself. It was a miracle. There was no more yelling, there was no more screaming, no more telling off the kid. He was daily telling me off, and all of a sudden, he was just like back to himself.
So fast. So
It was
what's your marriage like now? What is it like?
no, but I want to stick in just a little
Okay.
bit, just like for someone starting with the skills, like it would be so helpful to know this. So like it was for a month, it was like amazing, and I already started coaching. Like I had the two coaching sessions, and then I realized, and then like after a month, all of a sudden it started creeping back a little bit from 10 daily arguments, it was no arguments. Then it was like one every other day, things coming up. And I was like, oh my goodness. So I got on a coaching call and I raised my hand. I was like really stressed out. And Coach Kathy was amazing. And she helped me uncovered a really big blind spot. I was like kind of still controlling with the skills. I was like using the skills to control his
Control.
reaction.
Right?
I
Right?
realized
Yeah.
that I totally had a blind spot. I didn't realize I was like, part of the skills is doing it for yourself and not doing it for his reactions. It's for you to be a good person and be a good, respectful wife.
And to feel good about it, right? Yeah. Yeah. To feel
Exactly.
good about and have some dignity about the way you're showing up. And
Exactly, exactly. So I realized there was so much disrespect. Like I was still, even though I was doing I hear you and the duct tape and the gratitude, there was still like I still had those like preconceived notions that I focused on. They're like, oh, he's not going to do that right, and he doesn't do that right, and he's not, at the end of the day, he's not going to be like a mom, and like all that stuff, you know? Um, and like I really dug deep and like went back from the beginning of our marriage and like all the disrespect I showed. And I wrote him a whole letter and I issued a Laura Doyle apology of like I was so disrespectful of his family, of like the way he was brought up and the way his family did things. And I caused such a rift. Like, like no one wants their wife to talk about, even if he agreed with me, like a lot of things he agreed with. But like no one wants that their parents to be talked about that way or their family or anything. And I I wrote him a whole letter. I didn't expect a reaction. And like that was like the turning point. That was like when our miracle really was complete. He was like, thank you so much.
oh,
And like ever again, he's just like back to the romance of like when we got married. Even though I told you we had such good physical intimacy in between, but like he comes home, he gives me hugs. I receive his jokes. I used to shut his playfulness was gone. That was one of the things. He was had like such a funny sense of humor, but then like I was like, it's so corny. I don't like it. Like all that. And like just receive it and like just laugh. And I now just actually receive his humor, receive his love like I'm going into the receive. I'm using like all the skills at once, like for everything, and like actually receiving his like love and his like playfulness. His playfulness was gone. That last 6 months to a year, it was like gone. And he's like, "Why, Michelle? Why are you laughing? Like you're so giddy when I come home." I'm like, "Cause you're funny."
oh my
I'm like,
God.
"You always make me laugh."
Oh my gosh. So it was back. The laughter was
I can
back.
really cry. Like everything's back. It's just like calm and playful. And like the husband I lost is back. Like the husband I lost. I didn't even realize I lost that playfulness till it got really bad. And like he really stopped because I used to shut down his all his banter. He's just such an awesome, happy, fun guy. And he just wanted to make our house happy and fun. And I used to shut it down and disrespect him for it. Like, that's so nerdy. That's not funny. He would tell me like, laugh. Now it's time to laugh. And I'd be like, huh. And like now he's like, I don't need to tell you. Like he goes, oh, look at you laughing at my jokes that I don't even mean to be funny.
Oh my gosh. Michelle, you were so accountable. That's incredible that you were able to restore that playfulness by, I mean, it sounds like you had to really dig deep. And it's painful in a way, I think, to look at all your past disrespect and to acknowledge that the way you did. That's really something.
Yeah, I cried. I cried a lot when I wrote the letter.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't realize like it
Yeah.
brought up like it peeled off. I have such a toughness to me because of my upbringing of like having to control and take care of yourself and whatever you want, you have to take care of. And like the skills melted that. Like it just it took that like, why do you have to be so harsh and judgmental? Like life, you're okay, you're safe. Your husband just wants to make you happy. Like he just wants to make you laugh. He just wants to and like just receive it. And like when I received all the good he has to offer, like there's just so much. He has a soft place to land. There's emotional safety. He comes home. He tells me every day he comes home now. He tells me all about his day and things that like he would never tell me before that I always like, that's what I used to yell at him. That first conversation we had of me like, you don't talk to me. You don't tell me anything. He was broken. Like there was no, that it was just counterintuitive that conversation because that made him even feel less safe to open up to me.
Yeah. But I love how you see all those previous conversations through your new glasses, and you can see how you contributed to the culture that you were living in, and to where those breakdowns would come up. And it sounds like you feel empowered to have it be peaceful and playful with laughter at your house going
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah, I set the tone. I set the tone. Like, I thought it was all him. Yeah, he has his side of the street. But what came first, the chicken or the egg?
I don't know. Could have been the chicken.
No, it was no, looking back, that one of our first fight, he said, "Where's the respect?"
Oh, he
He said
said the
that word.
word
He said
respect.
that word. Look, all everything is like it's new. It's a whole new. I'm a whole new person with the whole new glasses. So like looking back at all the fight, like all the arguments, like of course maybe the way he reacted, a person shouldn't react. But what like now look at myself. What did I say? What was I doing?
Wow. Wow. You sound so empowered, Michelle. It's incredible, right? That's huge because, and I love the part of the story where you weren't ready at first, right? Like you got this from your wife and you're like, what's the point? Like, and then when you were ready, like you took in everything and you just drank and drank and drank it all up and implemented and got a coach and did all the things. And now it sounds like things are pretty great at your house.
Yeah, he stopped my kids like I just let him be a dad and he's like of course he's not yelling at them because he was feeling so undermined always. I'll be like, "No, don't do that. Don't say that. He didn't mean to. He's just a kid." I would like get in between him and the kids and now he's actually way better parenter than I am or I will ever be. He's able to parent them like I just leave it up to him. I don't get involved anymore. And this is only a couple
Wow.
months.
Oh my gosh. And what a relief that must be too, right? Like less exhausting. Is that
Yes.
so
I'm
you have way
lighter,
more energy?
happier. Like
Oh my gosh.
it's really amazing. But also I want to add, I keep on saying I want to add, there's so much I want to add, but specifically at the same time as my breakdown, like after we moved, I also was really, I had like, it wasn't only my husband, it was with my friends also, a few of my friends, like, like my friends are like my sisters, my family. Like they're just like those formative relationships in my life. I'm friends with them for like 15, 20 years since we're little kids. And like recently in the last year or two, I was like, some of them got married and had kids. And like, I still put you first in my life, like my husband and you. Like, why don't you do that to me? Like I fell into such a like big like trap with a lot of my friends. And I wasn't getting the relationship I wanted out of them. Like you still need your girlfriend so much when you're married and everything. And I've been like realizing how disrespectful and like how controlling I was and how like unsafe they felt. Like as my relationship was getting worse in my marriage, it was also going downhill with my friends. I was like transferring. I'm not two separate people, you know? And like, I was like, no, like, and then I took a deep look into my friends and like, I restored so much intimacy with all my friends.
Oh my gosh. So it's affected all your relationships,
Yeah,
not just your
everything
marriage.
with everyone.
That is awesome.
And my in-laws, I used to like, oh my gosh, we used to
Wow.
like
Wow.
come run into such issues. I actually issued an apology to my sister-in-law this week for being so disrespectful.
Unbelievable.
I
That's
called her up. Came out like it felt like sandpaper. It was so hard for me to do it,
oh
but
yeah.
so I was like, I apologize. I was like, ugh. But like, I really needed to. I used to put her down, her family down, and she got involved in the end. Um, like I called her up one day, his family didn't know anything. And I called her up one day and like went on and on and on. Your brother's crazy. Your family destroyed
Oh.
him. And I was like, yeah, could be he has like there is issues. Could be he did have upbringing issues, but I have my side and I want to apologize for that. And she was like so grateful and really restored.
Oh. Oh my gosh. I admire that so much. That is incredible. So, okay, what's your tip for somebody who is where you were, where there's cold wars, there's threats of divorce, he's just walking out, and she wants what you have now, where they're just laughing together, and he's a great dad, and he's that wonderful guy that she married. What's your best tip for her?
First of all, like just like be kind to yourself first and like that everything will be okay and you're a good person and like and that at the end of the day, like be kind to yourself, and you're a good person. And even if you feel so like disrespected yourself and all you're feeling like the underdog, because I felt like the underdog, um, just realize that like at the end of the day, the woman is the keeper of a relationship in the home and sets the tone, and you really have all the power. So if you just relinquish control of everyone else around you and all their thoughts and moods, and just focus on you and yourself and taking care of yourself, and making time for yourself, and that you're the biggest priority, it's not selfish. I thought it was selfish. It's not selfish. By you filling up your cup, that's the only way you could overflow and give it to other people. So that would be my message. And read the book, The Empowered Wife,
Sure.
and the podcast. That's why I was very like scared to come on the podcast, but I have to pay it forward. The amount, like, all those women out there, they picked me up. I'm like, if they could do it, if they could do it, if they could do it. I like gained so much insight during those dark days, that like literally one thing that one person did on the podcast and I implemented and like helped switch something else around. Like, it really helped me like get a real grasp on the skill. So I'm so grateful.
I'm so grateful too. It's so inspiring to hear your story. And I do want to give you the Best Wife Award. Congratulations, Michelle. You fixed your family. You may have saved your family, right? It sounds like there were some dark days. And those are behind you now, because now you not only you know what to do, but you've been doing it. You found the courage and the humility to um, to be accountable, to own your part. And that's made all the difference in your family. And I just am so impressed and want to celebrate you.
Thank you. Really, thank you. And I just want to say one more thing to you, Laura. Like that, I don't know, it was like a few weeks ago. It was me and my husband home in the middle of the day, and it was just our baby around. And it was just like so like, oh my gosh, like I wasn't doing anything. I just felt so like serene and calm and happy. And like my baby was running around. She's almost 2 now. And she was like doing antics. And me and my husband were just like smiling from ear to ear. Like my mouth was like gonna crack. And like this just from like happiness, like we were just enjoying. I never had that. I was just sitting and enjoying. And my daughter was running around and she looked so happy. And I was like, this little girl is like a Laura Doyle kid running around the house. And I know, Laura, you have no kids, but you have thousands and thousands of little Laura Doyle children running around, all happy only because of you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Michelle. I'm so happy to hear that. That's what we all want. It's that beautiful domestic scene you just painted for us. You and your husband together, just enjoying your baby and your happy baby who has the benefit of a mother who is skilled and humble and accountable and courageous, and therefore has this wonderful family. Um,
It's all thanks to you. It's literally all thanks to you. She like in dark days, I would be like huffing around the house. My husband, you have to watch the kids so I could do stuff. And I was just sitting. I didn't need to do anything. Like there's no more. I'm like so happy and free, and there's no weights on my shoulders. And then it transfers onto the kids. The kids are just in a happy home where their parents love each other and they feel loved and accepted. And they could have both their parents being like their best self.
What a wonderful world you've created. I love it. Thank you so much. This has been so uplifting and inspiring to hear your incredible story.
Thank
So
you.
good. Great job.
Thank you. I owe you the world.
According to a study at Harvard, and this was horrifying to hear, if you know a couple who's getting divorced, you are 75% more likely to get divorced too. Woo! It matters who you listen to, which is why over 7,000 women like you who think that having a great marriage is important have joined our free Adored Wife group. The Adored Wife group is a launch pad where you can meet our certified coaches and discover the best next steps for making your marriage last and thrive. It's 100% free to join. Just go to lauradoyle.org/group right now. This is a private group and it's not for everybody, but if you are a wife or girlfriend who thinks that having a great marriage is important too, we'd all really like to meet you. So go to lauradoyle.org/group right now to join us free. That's lauradoyle.org/group. empoweredwife.com/group. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. On next week's podcast, I'm going to share 5 signs that your husband has a crush on another woman. In the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that I wear a lot of moisturizer and sunscreen because that saying about what really matters is on the inside, I think, is mostly about the refrigerator.